we go.
All right. Welcome, welcome, family, to the Empower Hour. I am Alfamar,
And I am Hanifa.
and we are joined today with a special guest, Mr. Solomon Comissiong. And Solomon, please share with us your title so the folks who are not familiar with you know who you are.
Yes, my name is Solomon Comissiong, and I am the Assistant Director for Student Involvement and Public Relations at the Nimburu Cultural Center, which is a Black cultural center on the campus of the University of Maryland. I'm also, adjunct faculty member in African American Studies and the president of the Black Faculty and Staff Association on campus. And outside of that work, I'm the founder of Your World News, which is a Black-led independent media outlet, much like Empower Hour. That and I love the work that you were doing. And we've had these discussions offline. We, those of us in Black media, have to support one another because our perspectives and issues that are going on in our communities are simply never going to be displayed in an accurate light on corporate media and white media. So thanks, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you, and we appreciate all the work and the service you do and you give to the community. You stay forever vigilant and out there. Every time I see you on the scene, you got your black fist up in the air in some way, shape, or form. You making it happen, and I love that you deal with so many a lot of the international policy and information and news as it relates to us. And in my opinion, we don't see enough of that.
That's right.
So that you're on the scene and giving us the information off these shores.
That's right.
The current events off these shores is valuable. So thank you, Solomon.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So we wanted to have you on the program today to talk about, because you are an educator. You're right there at the University of Maryland, College Park. And so in the whole critical race theory phenomenon that's currently taking place, from what I understand, it's been in effect for quite some time. It's just hitting the mainstream.
That's right.
Because I guess some new rules, but I guess maybe you could tell us better, because I'm still attempting to get a good idea of what this really means and what it really entails. So we're hoping you can shed some light for us about that.
Sure, certainly, and I'll condense it because what happens a lot on these academic institutions, they try, as they try to kind of obfuscate things on purpose. But critical race theory it has been around since the late 70s, early 80s, and a group of legal scholars and activists, such as Kimberly Crenshaw and Derek Bell, they created this theory known as critical race theory. And what it basically is it's the putting into context why things are the way they are right now in regard to race-based oppression, institutional racism, and those types of things. Putting into context by drawing in history, the impact of chattel slavery, the impact of various policies, redlining, gentrification, the impact of Jim Crow, and putting them into context that this has played a significant role in terms of why we're seeing this mass, broad-based oppression, with Black and Brown communities today, in hopes that understanding and teaching people in the classroom, whether it's primary education, middle school, secondary, or even tertiary education, that it's going to lend itself towards the these younger generations having a better idea, and that this understanding, even outside of middle school and high schools and colleges, put together policies that are geared towards upending this systematic oppression, this systematic institutional racism. And a lot of white folks, mostly conservatives, but also white liberals, they don't like it. They don't like it in any shape, form, or fashion, because anytime you try to place things in their proper context, they don't want that. They want to have things in the prism that's based on, you hear the controversy, you hear these people saying that oh, it's attacking our American values, our values that are based on individual freedoms, and that if people work, if anyone works as hard as they can, the American dream can be achieved. And this takes away from all that. This pits us against each other. It pits white against black, and it pits Latino against white, and they try to, despite the fact that this country is institutionally racist. This country is a white supremacist bastion. It is a bastion of white supremacy from stolen coast to stolen coast. That they couldn't give a damn about the plights of people in Southeast DC or Southwest Detroit or South Central, Los Angeles. They couldn't give a damn as long as you are out of sight, out of mind. And they could care less. But they want to continue to pimp the labor. They want to continue to do all these different things. And so it's really clearly disingenuous on their part, and it's almost not even worth engaging them in a dialogue, because they're not going to be moved one way or the other. It's really important for us to push for critical race theory and the understanding of oppression and institutional racism to our own kids, whether it's study groups or Black-centered schools, things of that nature, because as Malcolm says behind us, only a fool would let his enemy teach his children, and they're not gonna teach it. I mean, we look at Arizona several years ago. I think it was SB. I can't remember what it was. It was a bill. I think it was SB 40, and Governor Jan Brewer in Arizona, she implemented this broad-basing thing that said ethnic studies could not be taught in school systems. Right? It couldn't be taught in elementary education. It couldn't be taught in secondary educational institutions. That it's divisive, it's divisive, and it's anti-American. But let alone, and this is, and this, Alkamar, and this, sister, that Americans, it's by design. Many Americans have been dumbed down because everybody in the world is an ethnicity. If you are Irish, you're an ethnicity. If you are Irish American, you are an ethnicity. Ethnicity, everyone's an ethnicity. So when she said that, she didn't mean white ethnicities wouldn't be taught, because they continue to teach about George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and all these different slave masters and slave owners and white supremacists. No problem. They were of ethnicities. That's ethnic studies right then and there. What she did is she extracted the teaching of Chicano studies, the teaching of African-American studies, all of that stuff. We see Texas, they've taken it out of the history books, right? A few years ago, they went and the school board voted to have the history books basically take out like the Trail of Tears, no talking about, no syntax about Martin Luther King or Malcolm X talking about, Black power struggle, civil rights struggle. We're going to take all that. We're going to make it seem like this is some type of kumbaya utopia throughout the United States, and anyone that is catching hell, that is being gunned down by police systematically in their communities, it's by happenstance. It just happens to be coincidence. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin. It has nothing to do with that. None whatsoever. And so that's critical race theory puts all of that in its proper context when taught accurately in the classroom. That's what, and that's all it is.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, Hanifa, you had a question?
No, go ahead, Alkama.
Let me ask you this, because as I hear you describe it, and as Malcolm said so eloquently, we have to teach our own children. Mm-hmm. And so in my head, I'm questioning what happens when we teach our own children the history that they are not going to get in these institutions, right? Mm-hmm. And so now we have the understanding, the truth, the facts, the evidential, proper information in order for our children to move on. However, they are not teaching their children the same information.
That's right.
However, they are in a current position of authority right now. We all know, let's just keep it real, above, what the authority that we don't have in this society. Mm-hmm. So what happens then? What does that look like moving forward? then if we have the information that we're teaching our children, but they have something different?
Right. That's an excellent. That's a really really excellent question I've never had posed to me in an interview, but but it's an important question that I've thought a lot about, and I have mused about it with, friends of mine offline, is that regardless of whether, they teach it to their children or not, and we know there's a large swath of white America that is simply, they're not going to teach it to their kids. They're not going to teach it to their kids. And so it may not permeate itself into different school systems whatsoever. I think that, and I've seen you chime in about it on social media. And I think it's, folks like you were right on point when you have had discussions about the importance of, because I love your memes that you post there and you throw out there to get people to chime in. But the idea of building our own institutions, we have to get in the business of, because there are Black-centered schools. There are independent Black-centered schools, African-centered schools in the United States. And many of them are extremely prosperous. They're right where the three of us are situated in the DMV, the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan area, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. There are several African-centered schools, Black-centered schools. And so what happens once these kids traverse and get to these African-centered schools, and your question, where white folks and now their kids have been handed down the power, if you will, these power structures, the same police institution that killed this person, that killed that person, it's still there. It's just different players. The cop may not be there, but there's a whole, another cadre of cops that have the same kind of mentality. You have the same kind of reactionary, police chief that's going to, cover it up and take their side and until the public, presses him to say something one way or the other, but the crime has already been committed. And that it's my answer to that is that revolution and struggle are never going to be easy. And that's where our focus, a lot of our focus is on. And because I don't want to make it seem like there's a lot of brothers and sisters that three of us know that are doing really, really great revolutionary work. We're doing great revolutionary work, the media, because the media is a critical component of that. If you guys are not putting stuff out week in, week out in Empower Hour, if I'm not doing stuff with Your World News, the Black Agenda Report's not doing their stuff, then we have a whole lot of people that don't have this critical information, don't have a strong understanding of these policies and why they continue to function the way they do. They don't have a working understanding of revolution and what it's going to take. What the solidarity, you started off asking me about the internationalism, my focus with internationalism and looking at things outside of the stolen manufactured US borders. Well, part of it is it's because it's important to. The other part is I want to be in solidarity. I consider myself an internationalist, as Malcolm did. And I think it's important for us to be in solidarity, in cahoots with other folks of color outside of our borders. I think that is a major step in the right direction towards revolution. If our brothers and sisters in Palestine don't have people that are thinking about getting involved in that struggle, quite frankly, they can look forward to decades and decades more of this racist, oppressive, deadly, destructive apartheid state of Israel that continues to do what they're doing there. The same way with South Africa. It was when people got involved and there was this international struggle. And so I would say revolution, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult, and as it has been, but we know we can look at some of the gains that have been made. Malcolm and folks of his generation have given us some vehicles and that we're now able to use, and some weapons that we're able to use in this struggle. And I think that we have to continue to push and push and push and push. And as Frederick Douglass said, I mean, power concedes nothing without demand, and we are beyond the point of demand.
So my question about the critical race theory piece. So is the focus to have this, is there like a curriculum that they, I mean, is there like a certain like curriculum that they're trying to introduce into like schools? And is this like all schools? And then if so, who monitors that? Because I'm thinking about like the diverse, as diversity as far as teachers are concerned. Like in certain schools, there are a lot of white teachers and
Yeah.
teachers from other ethnic. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question, honey. Critical race. So what they're trying to do. So for instance, if you look at Loudoun, I'm just going to give an example because it's close to us. Loudoun County.
Mhm.
They've been in the news a lot the last few months. You have a bunch of white parents that, stormed a school board meeting, and and they came out by the dozens, and their whole thing was to go and just just kind of this like coup d'etat of this meeting and take it over and talk about this, despite the fact that Loudoun County does not have critical race theory um, woven into their school system right now. They don't have teachers that have been taught, culturally relevant pedagogical philosophies, and a part of that have been taught how to properly implement discussions like constructive and productive construction discussions with young people about critical race theory. But they wanted to stop it before it had a chance. They wanted to stop it well before they wanted to get out in front. But it's not necessarily curriculum. It's actually teaching teachers how to a lot of places are teaching teachers how to have these conversations, how to and there's different activities, different scenarios where students are able to, because as young people can learn the stuff that college kids, you can 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 12-year-olds can learn the same stuff that college kids. The reason they don't get that stuff is because we've got to milk it as long as we possibly can. If we milk it as long as we can, that's more money. That's more money. We want to milk it. Kids could get, college students could get college degrees in half the time, right? But they need to milk it over the 4 years. They need to milk it over the 4 years and hopefully 5 years. That's more money, more money. I'm going to have you take this needless gen ed instead of you going right towards this. So it's just teaching them how to have these constructive discussions with their students. Giving them a scenario about what gentrification is and how somebody ends up getting moved out of their community. And some activists call it ethnic cleansing, and having like real honest discussions where students are actually put in the center of their learning. They're active participants. They're not just being didactically or pedantically lectured at
Right.
over and over and over again, this like inculcating manner where it's just boring, but putting them in the center. I've done these. I've been fortunate enough as an educational consultant to be brought to places like Seattle, Washington, and spending a week there. And the first half of the day they brought me there, and I was teaching teachers how to do this kind of stuff, and how to use vehicles that students understood, grasped, that extracurricular things that students are interested in as vehicles, points of departure, if you will, to explore difficult discussions, about race and culture and institutional and racism, which is power plus prejudice. Teaching students that, someone calling you the word nigger, that's prejudice. That's prejudice, and that's and yeah, you don't want that. You don't want to tolerate that. But racism is a system. It is power plus prejudice. It's somebody that would call you nigger and hate your guts, but also has the power to go ahead and move your entire family and your community off the block, within a few months' time. That has the power to, with the sweep of a pen, to say, all the young Black males aged 14 to 24, we're going to conduct these jump outs, and we are going to harass them, and we're going to profile them, for this many months. That's that. And there's a whole bunch of really creative activities that are on pieces of paper that have these scenarios, that it helps these students, puts these students as active participants in their own their own learning and this discussion. And that's why I love working with young people, because they'll ask those questions. Well, why is that, Mr. So-and-so? Why is that? Miss So-and-so, what? Well, why is that? Why would someone do that? Why would someone do that? I mean, and I'll just say this really quickly. One time I was doing a discussion on this, and we talked about slavery, and this was middle school students, and they all understood slavery. So we had a discussion about it. And they understood it. I said, so since you guys understand this, I said, what do you think? What do you think about people that were slave masters that would take away someone's freedom? I said, because for me, that's one of the most evil, wretched things that you can do to another human being, is to take their freedom away and work them until their last breath, until they die. What do you think about this? I asked the kids this, and they said, man, that's terrible. That's awful. Like, I hate those kind of people. I mean, they were saying this. And this was a room full, it was mostly Black and Latinx students, and there were a smattering of white students, a handful of white students. And they all said, and so I said, listen, let me pull out my wallet. I pulled out my wallet, and I knew I had a dollar bill, and I pulled out a dollar bill, and I said, this guy, who is this right here? Oh, George Washington. I said, since you already said it, that these people should not be celebrated. This man right here owned over 300 Africans. He enslaved over 300 Africans, Black people. At age 53, he lost his teeth, and he extracted the teeth from several of them so that it would be put into his mouth because he was losing his teeth. And the students, they ask questions that adults, and I've Elkamara, I've seen it on your post. I've seen folks that look like us, and you have done a valiant job trying to explain to some of our people who have been entrenched, who have been indoctrinated, who will just say the most ridiculous things, and they're speaking from a white supremacist perspective. And so but with young people, they're not putting up this inertia and whatever, because I've had debates with this discussion with some Black folks, and their first thing is, well, you can't blame Washington because that's the way things were then. I mean, that's what they'll say. That's the way things were. You can't blame him. That's how things were back then. He wasn't whatever. You can't. He's still a founding father. Where the young people, they'll ask you questions and they'll say, that's wrong. Well, why would they do that? And the next question was, why would they, if they know that, why would they put that there? I said, exactly. I said, because they don't care. They don't care. They're frauds. They don't care about it. And I love it. But that's what those folks are scared of. And we talk a lot about white conservatives, which we should, but white liberals are a whole nother beast. And I honestly have little to no patience. Like, white liberals I see is almost like worse in so many ways, because their thing is, as long as I don't call the three of y'all niggers, as long as I don't call you niggers, I'm not racist, right? But I will support policies that will take over your block, because I want to move Whole Foods over there, and I want that property over there. I want condos where Berry Farms was, and I want to do that. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with your ass getting beaten by the police and so forth. So they're white liberals. I mean, that's their thing, and they will bomb the smithereens. I mean, we know white liberals will support imperialist wars. They will support, as Bill Clinton did going in. We talk about Haiti right now, and Bill Clinton supported, kidnapping Aristide. They will support bombing Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya.
Now they after Cuba.
Yeah.
Look, speaking of white liberals, what I after we had planned this show, I was scrolling through, and C-SPAN put out a question on their Facebook page. What do you guys think of critical race theory? And of course, C-SPAN covers the whole gamut of the nation. And so you get responses from all over, left, right, center, and up and down. And so I just took the liberty to read through and screenshot a few of them, just so we can have some proper context as well as we discuss this matter. Yeah. So this Marty Poirier, and according to his picture, he looks like a European. This was a comment that he said concerning critical race theory, and I quote, "We can only start at 1776. Before that, America wasn't a country. Teaching history is necessary, but America wasn't and isn't built on an oppressor versus the oppressed. Everyone has the same chance at success. We are guaranteed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What you do with it is up to you. No to critical race theory, as it is a Marxist ideology. And I can't really get through that without chuckling, because this is the mind state that we're up against.
Yeah.
So like, to your point, you know what I'm saying? They and this would be somebody that say, oh, well, you know, my grandbaby is Black.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know what I'm saying? My best friend is a Black man. So these people really, you know what I'm saying? They don't want, in my opinion, they don't want to grasp understanding.
That's right.
Because it serves them no purpose, no benefit. Who in their right mind is going to have a king of their castle? They're up on a throne, and some other people come to them and say, hey, I deserve half of this throne from you. I want half of it. Mm-hmm. And when you've been accustomed to living this way for centuries, who will decide, okay, you know what, you're right, I'm going to give up half of everything and give it on over to you willingly? You know what I'm saying? They're not going to do that.
Not at all. Not at all. You're right. And they benefit. Yeah, you're right. They benefit. Like white liberals. I mean, we all live in the DC area. I mean, think about H Street, 20 years ago or 15 years ago. I mean, and they benefit. That whole area is flooded with a bunch of white liberals who could give a damn, about our eventual acquisition of self-determination in this country, this land of oppression. They could give a damn about it. And that's why it's like repugnant. It's like disgusting, because whenever whenever there's a Democrat in office, they will cheerlead the bombing of whatever country that Democrat, whatever. You will turn to MSNBC and CNN. They are a bunch of ruthless folks with blood all over their hands. They have no conscience whatsoever. They don't care about they don't care anymore about Abdul, who just got, and his family that just got blown up in Northwest Waziristan, or in Kandahar, or in Yemen. They could care less. They don't care any more about him than they do about Chandra Bland or Breonna Taylor or George Floyd or Delonte Rawlings. We could go on and on and on. They couldn't give a damn. They could not give a damn. And it's, so we have to continue to do so. We have to continue to build, like, F them, and move them out of the damn way. We know what white liberals are capable of. We know that the power they had, even with the early founding of the NAACP, pushing the likes of Ida B. Wells and Du Bois out because they thought they were too radically focused. We know white liberal women, right? Who got mad, like, how dare you be about to give Black men the right to vote before giving us white women the right to vote. We know the white feminists that came up with the term feminism, and as we know, there were Black women that, as a reaction, they knew that feminism was not touching on issues and the different intersectionalities that struggles that Black women face. So that's why the Black women created womanism. But Gloria Steinem and all the folks who created feminism, that's for white women. That's not for Black women. That's not for them. They could care less. But the thing that is so difficult is that so many of us, because we have been indoctrinated for so long, and we continue to watch CNN and MSNBC, we have no point of reference. Our point of reference is the talking points from white folks, from white producers, even if it's coming from the mouth of Joy Reid, who I can't stand in those Black talking heads on MSNBC, like Don Lemon or any of them. But they are speaking with what their white producers have allowed them to speak on. Their white producers said, yes, you can talk about this. And they know that if they step too far outside that box, that cushy job, that cushy 7-figure job is no more. It's no more. And so a lot of us don't have a point of reference. So we're walking around with talking points in our head And that's why I love the Empower Hour, because you guys get into the context. You get deep into the context. It's not just sound bites, a sound bite here. We're delving into the crux of what critical race theory is, and why, I even see some folks in the chat room saying, like, listen, it seems like we can't wait for them to allow us to teach it. We've got to teach it ourselves. And it can start in our households. If you don't have kids, you probably got nephews, you probably have nieces. If you don't have that, you have black and brown kids on your block. There's nothing stopping us from donating an hour or two of ours each month. Imagine if every black person that it was in a position to donate an hour or two a month. As the African proverb said, many hands make light work, where the three of us might have a workshop every month, donating free to black students on now we have Zoom and WebEx or whatever, about black media. And we're teaching black students about black media, how to create their own media outlets in their communities, how to do it, and giving them a context that this is part of our history. The California Eagle, the Amsterdam News, 250 plus black newspapers coast to coast when it was outlawed. This is part of our DNA. Teaching them out. Somebody else, my friend Troy Moten, someone teaching them about how to build black businesses. And we have a bunch of black entrepreneurs teaching black. Imagine that on a rolling basis, on a monthly basis. So if you have all these people pitching in, it's not a lot of work. It's 2 hours, a month for Alkamar and Hanifa and Solomon. And we have all these different, so like the brother said, yeah, we've got to do it ourselves. We have to do it ourselves.
So Solomon, I'm gonna be honest. This is gonna be another side of this.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a part of me that questions whether the push for critical race theory is just another attempt to teach racism to white people in hopes that white people stop being racist. Yeah. There's a part of me that feels that way. And then there's a part of me where that feels like that questions, let me not say feel, that questions whether this is just another attempt to, hey, let's civilize these people. Let's teach them about racism in hopes that then they'll stop being racist. Right. And then the other part that I question is like, is this just another like symbol, of progress, not actual progress, but a symbol of progress. I struggle with that a little bit because I get the push for it, but because I'm someone that thinks like my children minds are my responsibility, I do also know there's another side to that where there's not a lot of people that may have the access that I have, or like Alkama and I was even discussing yesterday, how much illiteracy is looked over in our community as it pertains to how people receive and understand, certain things. Like illiteracy isn't just, I can't pronounce the word. Illiteracy is like, I might be able to sound out the words, I might be able to even read them, but really comprehending, right, their meaning, like what does that look like? So I know that it's sort of like a privilege that some of us have. So I'm very careful with that, but there is a part of me that questions, is this just another attempt to teach white people about racism in hopes that they won't be racist anymore?
Yeah, and that's a good point that you bring up. Anyone, especially anyone that looks like us, that has this beautiful melanin that we have, that takes that approach, I would hope would stay far away from it, because I'm not a proponent of trying to win over your enemies, trying to win people over and try to beg people to to see you as human or anything like that. I mean, it is what, a lot of these people, they're going to live and they're going to die as racist with whatever. But my thing is, as long as your hatred of me does not control my community, my responsibility is with my community. And so to me, it's not that's not the right way to teach it. And matter of fact, I couldn't even care less if people use that term critical race theory, as long as there is the teaching of an understanding of why things are this way. Like this is, so it should be taught that how to get out of this, how we need to work together, what we need to do in our communities, how do we need to build institutions, because these folks, that these devils that created institutions, like a George Washington, like Thomas Jefferson, they built institutions, right? They've been dead for hundreds of years. And if nothing else, right, I'm into athletics, you have to respect your opponent, right? When you don't respect your opponent, your guard's down and you leave yourself susceptible for getting your ass kicked. And so you have to respect your opponent, and you got to respect their blueprint. They have rarely had to even change the font. It has worked and has perpetuated itself for generations and generations and generations. We need to build institutions. We need to build institutions that will insulate ourselves, our communities from that. That we need to build institutions that are geared towards upending that. And the folks that created critical race theory, the way I understand it, hearing folks like Kimberly Crenshaw speak, and she's still very active to this day. It was more so of a trying to change policies so that certain policies that are in place, redlining, gentrification, police brutality, that these things would be upended as policies shifted and changed, and therefore lives would be saved, because it's not just lives being lost by way of cops' bullet, but lives are lost from poverty. People die from poverty every single day, and opportunities are lost by way of poverty all the time, and these things are anchored by institutional racism. So your question, or the point that you brought up, it is extremely valid, and to me, that's anytime you're trying to teach folks, Black kids, that we're trying to win them over. I hate, oh my gosh, I hate that. You see it with we've seen it with the brother who what was that brother? Was it Ahmaud Arbery's brother?
Yeah.
He ran up and he hugged. And they go out and they'll say I cringe when I hear that with these folks in these press conferences and saying when they say, we've got to teach them with love. We've got to teach them with love. Like hate's not gonna, us hating them is not gonna solve anything. We've got to love them. We've got to win them over for love. Like, get the hell out of here. We're not trying to win them over for what? Win them over? Our people are being killed. Your brother, your kinfolk was killed by, what are you talking about? Win them over with love, so that's not the way. To me, that's not the way it should be implemented. We should be focused on, like, as I said, building institutions, and we should be focused on doing what we can to create policy changes. When I say policy changes, I mean also us controlling our school boards. If we controlled school boards independently, if we represent the majority in this city or this city, we should be controlling the information and the books that are entering the classrooms and how things are being taught in these schools. But since we didn't, we can have a Texas go ahead, and because they control the school board, they're able to say, hey, we're going to completely rewrite the history books. We're going to completely rewrite the history books. We're going to take out this, we're going to take out that. No Trail of Tears, that didn't exist. We're going to call the theft of Native American land and the genocide of Native Americans, we're going to call it westward expansion. Wow. I can't make this up. This is literally what they replaced it with in the history books. We're going to call it westward expansion. So that theft of Native American land, that genocide that was committed upon them, is called westward expansion. Westward expansion.
And I promised the family I was coming to them next, but I promise I'm coming, Troy. And I would just want to know to that, what happens to our children when we don't get that proper history, though? Now, what does that look like? So now that's, okay, so, our children are going to school and learning that was westward expansion, if you're into them schools that they're teaching it. And so what happens to our children growing up without the proper history and knowledge of from whence they came?
Yeah, well, they look like Don Lemon. They look like, yeah. I mean that that they look like all these like handkerchief head Negroes that I mean Joy Reid. I mean we can go on and on. They're on they're on MSNBC. They're on CNN. We that's what it looks like. And I mean even these black conservatives, Jesse Lee Peterson, and that's what it looks
And
like.
so in effect,
Yeah.
then we begin to work against ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. I mean a lot of them don't even. I mean. Like on the conservative side, Jesse Lee Peterson, I mean, he doesn't even couldn't consider himself a part of this fray, but the other ones would. Joy Reid would consider herself like, yeah, but she's not. She works against the interests of Black people, all the time, and all you got to do is watch. I mean, when you watched, I mean, how she lambasted young Black people, 18 years and above. She tore into them for having the audacity to not vote for Joe Biden, to not Joe. I mean, I saw this. I mean, because I have to put myself through that kind of like that torture because I study and I write about the media. So I will watch, an hour or two of these outlets per week. And she, she laid into him. She's like, you're just going to be a part of the problem. And she had a little commentary at the end of her show. And said, if you're not voting for Biden, if you're voting for some other third party, or you're sitting out, you are a part of the problem, and you're in essence you're working for Donald Trump. I mean that's, they have no problem. I mean their paychecks are bought and sold by the DNC. Their paychecks are bought and sold by white liberals with billionaire bank accounts. And they have no problem whatsoever working against our best interests. But I'll tell you this: what also needs to be taught, and you just laid out a justification why, because we shouldn't have these lofty expectations for our kids to turn out like a Don Lemon or to have this kind of a mentality, but also that should be woven into that is media literacy. Media literacy has to be taught to our children. It has to be. And it's something that I have taught a long time to children, as much as I possibly can, and to even my college students, media literacy. Because if you cannot deconstruct dominant narratives that you're bombarded with every single freaking day, whether it's a commercial, whether it's ads, or whether it is this information that is being fed to you on these, this corporate media, teaching you how to think. How do you think about each other? They even tell subliminally tell you how to think, how you should and shouldn't be thinking about each other, how you should and shouldn't be thinking about your communities. If media literacy is not woven into household curriculums with parents with their children or in our communities, it's an uphill battle, sisters. I mean, it's an uphill battle. It's a huge uphill battle, because you could have people that could wear dashikis and be all Afrocentric, but at the same time, their minds are not. They don't mind dressing the part. Yeah, I'll celebrate Kwanzaa. I'll do this, that, and the other. But their minds are that of a white liberal. They don't have,
we see that
all the time.
Clearly, currently with this whole vaccination thing.
Mm-hmm.
That clearly, I'm surprised at how so many of us, who I would assume will have proper knowledge and understanding of, this whole arena and how it works. And they don't. And so I find it fascinating. But I do want to get to the stream, because I promised them that I'm coming to them next. And Troy said Troy Moten, he said, if they're going to teach history, they have to teach it accurately, or don't teach it at all. We can't approve deliberate miseducation. My question, though, is critical race theory history, though? Technically, we're talking about the institution that currently exists.
Right.
Right?
History is a current event. History is a current event. It's a current event. Yeah.
So, okay. And then he also says we're in the middle of a race war. What other war do people go into battle requesting hugs? It's absurd.
Yeah.
Good point.
Right on, Troy. Good point, Troy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but some people don't see themselves at war. They just see themselves as Americans, Black Americans, who have it a little bit harder, and therefore they have to work twice as hard. And that whole us as hard narrative, we don't even see the problem with it. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
we push it on to our children. So yeah, that's what you end up having when you don't know that you're a war. You don't even think you have an enemy. You just feel like, I just have to work a little harder.
Yeah.
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 And I, and
Because I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, and I'm glad you guys brought this up, and because I studied foreign policy so much, and I remember the Obama administration. I'll never forget it, and it was surreal, and Troy remembers this because we had conversations about this like in real time, seeing so many Black folks that were celebrating the moves of Obama, bombing Libya. I mean, this is an African nation, and celebrating. I mean, that's the man behind me would have never done that. I mean, even King. I mean, King. Part of the reason he lost his life because he was outspoken against imperialism, and celebrating, and then having the audacity to try to debate you to justify why this should be done. And that both of you were in the know. I remember, seeing you guys on so what was behind it. It was to take out Gaddafi, because of the gold and, the dollar. I don't want your worthless dollar. If you want our oil, it needs to be backed with something. It needs some gold. And no, I'm going to give you the finger to AFRICOM. No, you cannot situate AFRICOM in Libya. You cannot. And so many people bought into these narratives, not knowing that Libya had the highest living standard of any African nation, even outside of South Africa at the time. That there were dark-skinned, Africans from other countries, from Chad and Mali, that were living in Libya. That Black women who were mass raped by the Al Qaeda of the Islamic Maghreb that was there, that was overrun, that the CIA was giving arms and munitions to, and so they were rabid racists, and so those Arabs were going in there and they were hunting down because they saw any dark-skinned African as being a potential ally with Gaddafi, because Gaddafi gave them refuge to move there and whatever. And these people are, I'm like, you're cheerleading this. Black women are having their breasts cut off and they're being gang raped. Black men are being lynched and being hung from light posts right there. I mean, we know this. I mean, Cynthia McKinney and that delegation that went in there in the midst of a war that reported on this. We know these things were going on. And to see Black folks here in the United States, it was surreal in the most sad way. It's like, you are so confused. You're literally the mouthpieces of these white folks, against your own people's interests. And then El Kamar and Hanifa, then they'll take this, well, I'm not from Africa. I've never been to Africa. You've heard that narrative. I'm not I'm American, as Hanifa just said. I'm American. I've never been to Africa. I've never ever been to Africa, so I'm not an African. Get the hell out of here with that. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what's happening right now with the so-called foundational Black American movement, and the some people that are followers of the ADOS. I would say more so the FBA movement, which is kind of like headed, like Tariq Nasheed is more of a person that's pushing that. If you look at the conversations, that is the conversation. The conversation is, you guys are different. We are not Africans. This is why they make sure they put foundational Black Americans. We are not. Some of us are indigenous to this land. There's a whole a conversation that's taking place. But I also wanted to speak to the fact that when you were talking about Libya, I chuckled to myself because I'm like, do you know how many Black people don't even know that Libya is in North Africa? Like, they don't even, they have no clue, no clue. And so even when you talk, when they discuss the Middle East and so forth, they talk about it as if it's separate from,
Yeah.
the continent and so forth. So people are really, really not aware. And the people that you're talking about, there's like three categories of people. There are those of us who, and when I use conscious here, I'm just using it in the sense of aware. Okay, those of us who are aware, and who are aware to the point where we are becoming more and more aware. We're seeking the knowledge. We're doing the research. That's that category. Then there's a category of us who are highly educated and really just want to participate in the system because we want close proximity to whiteness, because that equates wealth and status to us. So that's that category. And then there's a third category of us that we don't even have the capacity to focus on these things because we are busy surviving.
True.
That's
This
right.
is why the Black Panther program, breakfast program, was such a threat, because the reality is this: if you can meet people's need, you can get their attention.
Mhm.
So there's that category where some of us, we're trying to talk to them, but they're hungry and they can't hear you over the sound of their own stomach.
Mhm.
And I think that we have to put that into perspective. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. When you mentioned Libya, I'm like, you know how many people, man, go in DC and ask them where Libya is at.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
literally go to, so
Yeah.
I just kind of wanted to
Yeah.
kind of introduce that part, because I feel like most of us in these circles, we're talking to each other.
Yeah.
Because the people who are highly educated and who are sold out and who are bought
Yeah.
by the system and who are close proximity is just like, you know what, I'm going to make it, right? They're not hearing us. And then there's those who just cannot hear us. And I feel like the focus needs to be more on those who are just, it's not that they don't want to know, it's just that they're too hungry to want to know.
Mhm.
They're too busy surviving to want to know. And I think if we were to start working with those
That's right.
parts of our communities, I'm telling you, you talk about raising up some warriors, they're there. They're in the corners of our neighborhoods right now.
That's right.
And that's why it is so
Mhm.
spot on, Hanifa. Excellent breakdown. And I believe that's why it's so important to have our own systems in place. Because when we have our own systems in place, like the free breakfast program and our own schools and our own libraries, where we fill the books what we want our children to have, and you know what I'm saying, and all these other things, then we have better control of how this our own system is going to function and work. And so we can do some healing and some help, you know what I'm saying? We can implement all that as standard in our system, the things that we absolutely need, you know what I'm saying, above and beyond entertainment. You know what I'm saying? The needs of our community. And it's a sad thing because, honey, for that 1/3 of the community that you mentioned that have the resources, the vast majority of resources in our community aren't thinking like that. Yeah. They're not thinking, like you said, they just want to grab the bag so they can be comfortable and chum cozy, with the dominant culture. And so here we are, the rest of us, attempting to do all we can when it could be so much more, it can be so much more doable. It's so much more tangible if those who have the greatest amount of resources would just have the care. Because sometimes they know. They really understand and clearly know, but they could care less.
And that's what and those are the folks that I'm talking about. The debates that I had with folks that Troy was, had the same debates. I'm talking about those folks that are well-to-do. I'm talking about those folks from Mitchellville, Maryland, and other parts and Upper Marlboro. Those are folks I'm talking about, because I wouldn't bring it up unless it came up in the context of this conversation. And Troy knows, I've spent several years of my life, going into places a lot of folks won't go into, prisons and jails, and help start. I was a part of helping to start a prisoner college pipeline program for several years. We were going into Oak Hill Juvenile Detention Center, now called New Beginnings, and most of the young men that are adjudicated there, like 99% of them are Black, and the vast majority of them are from Southeast DC, Northeast. And we would go in there, and we would do weekly programs there, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and having these engaging conversations. And then when they got released, we had reentry programs where, mentoring programs where we stayed with them. And you're right, Hanifa, like I would prefer, like there are a lot of cats. And I say this, Troy knows this because Troy was a student of mine. He was a student in my classroom. So he knows I've said it, a bunch of times. I said, no disrespect to y'all, but I said there are folks in inner city communities from coast to coast right now that have PhD knowledge that are holding forth all the time. And then there are people that if they would just get that information, I said, look what the information did when Malcolm got that information. There are people right now in our communities ready that if they got the information and their minds were truly like liberated, we have the resources to go in there to help give them, just simple things like meals, and then to engage in these kind of free educational conversations to talk about a range of things so they understand a lot. I mean, Hanifa, it's not just Libya. There's a lot of people that are indigent and poor in Detroit, in Southeast DC, wherever you want to name it, that don't even, and it's by design, that don't even know the cause of why their communities are perpetually under attack by systematic poverty. They don't even know that. And that's by design. That's by design, because if they understand that, they will revolt. There will be a revolution within those communities to upend those forces that are on their backs right now. And so I could not agree more. Like, you go in there, and some of the most beautiful conversations I've had are going into inner city communities, and they're hungry. And some of them know the game. They might not be able to name this policy with it, but they know the game. They can articulate it in their own way, and they know what's going on. Some are really well read and know the game, and then some, it just takes that little bit of like, word, seriously, like, what, you know. And I'll just give you one example. I'll never forget it. I remember going into Oak Hill, and we were going there. We started talking about. We pulled up a map of Africa. We started talking about African history, and the brothers in there, like 14, 15, 16, no joke, I'm not making this up. Troy's heard this story, and they started making these monkey sounds. And by this time, we had been there so long, week in and week out, they knew we weren't just volunteers. They call us OGs. We were like brothers to them. And so we were able to have honest conversations with them and talk to them a certain way that we couldn't, whatever. So I remember me and my man, Joe, Dr. Richardson at Maryland, University of Maryland, professor in African-American studies. And we were like, so y'all know, like, if you really making monkey sounds. I said, you might as well look in the mirror. I said, you're a monkey too, then, if you're making monkey sounds when you pull it up. And they, well, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And then I was like, because that's your history. And so it took there was one warrior that this brother, he said, no, shut up. Let the OGs talk. Let them talk. They're right. And he said a couple nuggets. The next thing you know, we started talking, and they're like, well, why haven't I gotten this information? And we started having this conversation about why that information was never presented to them. I'm telling you, it was the most beautiful conversation. At the end of all of that, they was like pissed off at the man. They was heated. They're like, yo, this is fucked up. This, and it led to another session a week later when we came back in there. It was beautiful. And it opened up their minds in ways that they hadn't been. But that is part of the, and we told them, it's not your fault. The reason why you see Africa and you see Black people from there as monkeys, and you see yourself as whatever, that's by design. Mm. And I remember because it was the first time we had like a little computer in there, and we pulled up that speech by Malcolm when he was saying, who taught you to hate yourself? Who taught you to hate your thick nose? Who taught you? And they were like, yo, that makes sense. And I said, he came through the whole, whatever. It was information when he was locked up that opened up. And I said, the people that killed him and the forces that killed him that were behind his murder, many of them are long dead and gone, and they will be long dead and gone, and they will be afterthoughts. This man, people will be talking about Malcolm 100 years from now. 100 years from now, his legacy is not going anywhere.
Right.
And so Hanifa, that is what those conversations are ripe. And like both of you said, we just got to give our some of our most valuable, like I say, our most valuable resource in our community is not gold or chains. It's the youth. And then after that, it's our time. Those of us that have the time, that are in a position, that are not worrying about where our next check is coming from, because as we know, most working class Americans are one check away from being homeless. Those of us that are not in that situation, we need to find ways to give our time in some shape, form, or capacity, and it starts there. And because otherwise, and as you know, I live in PG County. You guys do a lot of work in PG County. You know that there's this big divide in our county, right? You have people from places like Mitchellville blaming, right? They blame the poor school systems, and they blame different issues in the county on those Black folks in Seat Pleasant, those Black folks over there in Suitland. I mean, they don't need white folks, man. They do it. They sit there and you have these uppity, bougie Negroes blaming other folks in PG County, and I'm like, you're crazy.
Yeah, because they don't have the proper understanding either. They are usually the ones that grew up in the schools that you described early on in Texas, who taught that, you know, what you say, that they took, they're not teaching the proper history.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's this whole random acts of kindness, this whole thing, you know, we get in these institutions, these work, the jobs, the schools and things like that. And then we get chummy with Europeans, and they become our friends, and they'll smile at us and bring us coffee and donuts in the morning. And so now all is forgiven.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? We forget about the systemic part of racism because, wait, I can't, you know what I'm saying? I can't go against anything that, because my friend Susie might become offended. You know, meanwhile, your whole daggone culture is being affected. The whole, you know, community of Black people is being affected by these laws and guidelines and bylaws and stuff. But you don't want to speak up or out against it because you're afraid that Susie's going to get offended.
That's right.
You know, I think it's a cowardly approach. It's a. I just want to mention too, our brother Darren Butler is on the screen, and he asked, "How do we put this into action?" Did anybody want to address that? What we're speaking of, he's saying, how do you put what we're speaking of in action? I would just respond by saying, go look in the mirror. You know what I'm saying? Go look in the mirror. I think that's what we have a tendency to do as well, is that we're looking for other people to put things into action where we have the power to do ourselves. So wherever you get in, where you fit in, you get in where you fit in, and you make the necessary changes, even if it is running your mouth to other people that have the capacity to make the greatest amount of change, you know. But that's just the way I would respond to that. But if you wanted to, Solomon.
I think if I could just throw this in there too, I don't know, maybe it's just the way I grew up. I for me personally, I think this was it may have been the UK where they had Saturday school. Am I correct with that? Okay. Like I understand homeschooling, and I'm definitely for homeschooling, but I also understand that there's a number of people that look like me who may never be able to do that. And so I'm always thinking about the people who don't have the access and the resources to do some of the things that some of us in our lovely privilege, right, talk very passionately and strongly about. So I'm always thinking of, what does that look like? And I've been thinking a lot about like Saturday schools, you know what I mean? Where your child can come, they can have a meal, and they can learn their history, even though they're still in the public school system. Because there are some of these parents that they're just, let's face it, they're not going to pick up a book, right? They're not going to read Amos Wilson, right? They're not going to read Malcolm. They're just not, because why? They have other things that they need to focus on. And as long as their energy is going towards those things, as I'm talking about matters of survival, okay? Where's the next meal going to come from? How do I keep a roof over my children's head? And I need someone to watch my children while I'm at work. And that's where the school system comes in. Much less, even if I wanted to educate my children, I dropped out in 7th grade. I don't even know where to begin. Those are the people who are always at the forefront of my mind, right? And so I'm like, okay, where do those of us who have the knowledge, how can we help those people? And I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is like Saturday schools, you know, maybe start in Saturday schools in your home, okay? Just in your living room for a couple of children in the neighborhood, where you just let the parents know. And I'm talking to myself as well here. Where you maybe you could just put a little flyer out. You know, we put flyers out for our businesses and all sorts of things all the time. You know, maybe put it on people's door. Hey, you know, I have this. My name is such and such. I work for foster care. So I'm always saying to myself, anything that I do, I'm going to present my fingerprints results, my background clearances, because people have a right to be concerned about who have access to their child. So if you don't just come and say, because my name is Alkama, You know, you should just send your child to me. Come prepared. Hey, here, this is what I've done. You know, this is the type of work I do. Here's my background clearances. Here's my fingerprint. You know,
Yeah.
clearances.
And now we have Zoom though.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. I'm so glad you threw that in there as well. But I'm just saying, for me, I like kind of like one-on-one interaction, because I feel like the pandemic has done a number on us mentally, because we are social beings, right? And we need to socialize. So, but yes, Alcom, I agree with you. You could take that route as well. But just kind of making yourself known. Most of us, a lot of people don't even know their neighbors. I'm just answering to what the brother asked. So wherever you find yourself, you know, and that's going outside of the home. Like Alkema said, look at your own home. What is it that you could be doing better? Start there, and then you expand out into your community. So I just kind of wanted to mention the Saturday school thing, just for those people who they're just not going to do it because they don't have the capacity, the resources, nor the energy to focus on educating their children in Black awareness. And
Yeah.
they just they're not equipped to do that. And so
Yeah.
what are those of us who are, how do we help them? So that's where my mind goes when he asked that question. I'm sorry, I kind of went on, but go ahead.
Did you want to address that, Solomon, or we
Yeah,
move?
no, and I could listen to you guys all day. No, no apologies there. That was great. Um, Actually, brother Troy myself, and I've had conversations with another brother who's in the chat, Javon Greenaway, who's in he's in New York City, and he's a fraternity brother of mine. We're in a fraternity called Malik Fraternity Incorporated, which is an African-centered fraternity, and we're in the preliminary process of putting together, um, something via Zoom that's going to be on a periodic basis, a couple times a month, starting off, and as a way to open up doors. We want to do reading groups that will be open up to the community, anybody and everybody. And we're asking to try to asking people that we connect to exponentially connect it to other folks that they know. There's a brother that Troy knows who's a part of it, who is actually teaching youth from a GED class to youth from all over DC, Southeast DC, where they come into his, he has a building that he has access to, and they'll come in and he shows, he teaches them GED classes, but outside of that, he's looking to expand that to media literacy classes. He's invited me to be a part of it. I've gladly accepted. And so we're trying to expand on this and put this together in some type of formal but informal way, and where we would pull in folks from any and everywhere, in this country, and as well as outside this country, wherever the internet is met. And yes, and also understand, yeah, unfortunately there are people that still don't have access to internet, but we're trying to reach as many as we can, and we hope to launch that within the next couple of months. But but as you and you, like you said, it came time where Al Kamara, you said, look in the mirror, right? I mean, I've been fortunate to be in positions to have worked with folks and to have been an organizer for the last couple decades of my life, and so I have a lot of experience as an organizer. I learned from elders who were tremendous organizers who taught me, and so by way of that, I have been a part of helping to put together such programs well before Zoom, and so we're just trying to kind of take what we learned from that and apply it with this new technology apparatus, and, so that we can try to reach many more outside of even our own immediate geographic communities, but they're still a part of our larger African community. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think the dynamics of the education that you guys are just describing is so imperative. I can hear some of our folks out there in my ear who will say things like, all we do is talk. Later for talk, we need more action, da 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 da. But I think we don't understand how you can't get people to move on anything that they don't completely understand what they're moving for, And so the education piece is vital. We have to educate the masses of the people for them to understand the predicament we find ourselves in, because there's a lot of us out there that, you know, they don't even understand the political basics of how, like you said, how we got into this quagmire. And so if the people don't understand on a molecular level what's happening to them, but then you come into them and saying, you need to do this A, B, and C, and D, they looking at you like you crazy, because they don't have the proper understanding to be able to maneuver in the ways in which they need to for survival's sake. So the key is school. And I think, you know, the whole education piece, brother mentioned the political piece. Yeah, learning political science, teaching how to farm and carpentry and engineering and all those things that we've gotten away from, that is so necessary to building our own institutions, you know, because the education piece can look a whole lot of different ways too. What are we teaching? When we do gather the people, what are we teaching them? So yeah, all those things are vital and important.
And teaching them the way, you know, I teach this to my students all the time. I said, listen, politics, do not think about politics as Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, whatever. That's not politics. Politics is anything and everything that you can or cannot do in your community, in society, is dictated. That's politics. Driving down the highway and it says 65 miles per hour. That's politics right there. That's so if you're not, when you tell me you're not into politics, you're basically saying I'm a zombie. I am there to let other folks control myself, control any machinations I have, control my community. No, so like you said, the community farming, that's a bold move in politics. That's revolutionary. Revolutionary is not just, you know, we've been programmed to think that we have revolutionary can come in so many different forms. That's a revolutionary act in and of itself. The breakfast program, that was a revolutionary act. These are revolutionary acts. And so we have to think about things in those ways and control the politics of our communities, get in the business of controlling the politics in our communities. And also, you know, something very simple, get in the business of also speaking out. So many of us, how many times have you been to a forum and somebody will come up to you, Sister El Kamar, hey, Sister Hanifa, man, I really dug what you said. You were spot on. You know, but why didn't you say it? Why didn't you stand up? Why didn't you stand up and speak up? Why didn't you say something? You know, I've had people tell me that on campus at forums that had to do with issues that were going on campus, but they said, no, but I let you do it. I got a supervisor, I could get fired. I said, you don't think I could get fired? You don't think that they could I work at the pleasure, as they say in your contract, at the pleasure of the university. And so I understand that. And, you know, I do understand that that's important, but it's also a revolutionary act to be able to, you know, not everyone's going to speak up, but you have to be able to be willing to do stuff behind the scenes. Then you can provide this resource and provide that resource. You can help us, you know, get space in this building so that we can have this meeting, you know, and
send some money.
We can open up this, you know, the community to come in and partake in this. Yeah, money, exactly. Then fork over some money, because we're going to need a case of, you know, a few, like a dozen cases of water for this program that we're doing. We got this many youth coming in, and we want to provide snacks and food and things of that nature. So yeah, these are all, you know, revolutionary acts that can be done in the front and be done behind the scenes, but don't just say something and do nothing. If you're not going to speak up, fine, but you need to be willing to do something. You need to be willing to do something. How many of those people, those enslaved Africans that, you know, kept their mouth quiet, but plotted behind the scenes for that insurrection? I mean, they played a role. You know what I'm saying? Don't be that person that went in and ratted out Nat Turner. Oh, Denmark Vesey, he's about to do this. You know, we know he's about, in a couple of days, he's going to do this, massa. No, we can't. Yeah, we can't be a part of that. And yeah, those folks have to be isolated and you know, shunned. So.
Yeah, Troy said that's right. If they're scared to talk, quietly send those dollars.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Be Prince.
Well, I know we're about to wrap up. I just wanted to kind of inject with Solomon, you were talking about revolution. I think the most revolutionary thing that any of us can do is to take back the agency over ourselves.
Mhm.
That's the most important thing. The one of the most powerful things you can do. Alkama and I were speaking before you came on, Solomon, and I was sharing with her that sometimes we think revolution is simply like marching in the street, and that could be a part of it, right? That can be a part of it. But what about, okay, the pharmaceutical, industry is a fraud and they are profiting over people, I mean, from keeping people sick. And I was sharing with Alkema and revolution to revolt against that is to take your health into your own hands. It could be as simple as saying, no, I need to get off of these medications. Like revolution, right, is so multi-layered. And to really like look at it just like, one dimensionally, like, okay, this is how it looks. I just need to throw up my fist. No, it's so, we talk about homeschooling. That is revolutionary. All
Mhm.
right, taking control over the minds of your children, right? Studying, deciding not to just focus on what the media forces you to, but going and getting books that people are not reading and studying for yourself for generations to come. When I study now, I'm not studying just for my children. I'm studying for my grandchildren too, because I
Right.
want them to be able to come to my feet, to sit at my feet and learn what
Wow.
they need to learn about themselves. So me equipping myself, it's not just about me or my children. I'm talking about my grandchildren who I hope to meet, right? So we have to look at it like that, to where everything that we do towards liberation can't be about the now alone, you know? So that I just wanted to inject that since we were talking about revolution. Revolution isn't just one thing. It's
Correct.
just not one thing. Solomon is in the academics, rock out, in that in that arena. Whatever your arena is, get in there and rock out and be revolutionary in that space. It doesn't have to look just one way alone. But the most powerful form of revolution for me is agency over your own self, control over your own mind, and not and getting out of the passenger seat of your black life and becoming the driver of it.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Mhm.
I just kind of
Right.
wanted to inject that.
I
Good
love what you
teaching.
said about study too. Not read books, study books.
Mhm.
Study those books, underline them, highlight them. Those books are to be studied and over and over again, and come back to those notes and take notes, because you don't want to
Yeah.
just passively read. I mean, I always make the joke, man. We all know at least one person that just has a bunch of books on a coffee table and go to their house just for show and tell. Like we've got to get out of that. We've got to like delve into these books, and we're studying. We're not just gonna have some kind of exercise. Yeah, I have a bunch of books on a bookshelf and that I don't do anything with. Study the hell out of them. Study them, because our lives and our communities, quite frankly, can depend on information in those books. Even if they're just books about how we got in the situation, like there's solutions in there to how to get the hell out of it as well.
Right.
So
That's
yeah.
right. And that's the point. Even to the point of the topic of our discussion today, critical race theory. It's like we have the power to teach our own children if we doing the proper studying of these books and sharing what we learn with others, then we are conducting the critical race information. It's not a theory, you know what I'm saying? It's the truth, it's facts, it's the information that we need to have in order for our future to be brighter.
No doubt.
So, well, that's my end. I'm going to end it there. If Solomon, you wanted any last minute
My,
points, you wanted to direct folks to your world news.
I just want to say thank you so much, if, for the opportunity to come on. It's been a while since last time it was,
Yeah.
it was that everlasting life. And I remember, being, so many things have changed since then, COVID, but I really so appreciate the work that you guys do, week in and week out. It's quite frankly invaluable. And our ancestors like the Ivy Wellses, Marcus Garvey, with the Negro World, all those folks, those Black brothers and sisters of ours that did amazing media work, lived through what you're doing, David Walker's The Appeal. I mean, that's the work that you're doing, and I appreciate it. And if people want to, they can go to yourworldnews.org. You know, I think that we've got some really great articles on there. We've got some great interviews. You know, we've done documentaries on everything about, you know, the white control of the media and how it's impacted hip hop culture. And we've done, you know, stuff on police terror and put it into the context of you know, what, you know, we don't call it, you know, police brutality, the terror that's going on. You know, the documentary got into the slave patrols and all that other stuff. And so if people just want to support our work just by visiting our website, you know, and Troy does work for Your World News. You know, he's the, you know, economic editor. So he does a lot of stuff on Black economic empowerment and Black business ownership. He's very passionate about that. And so I just, but thank you for giving me this platform, allowing me to share my thoughts with your audience and being able to be educated by reading a lot of the on point comments that I see in the chat in their audience as well. And the genius that is the two of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Solomon.
Yeah.
We appreciate you guys, and thank you guys that's joined in on the discussion. Everybody on the stream, thank you so much for all your shares. That is very important, family. That's very important. If even if you didn't get one thing, I always say if you got one thing out of the discussion, share it. Maybe you can share it and you didn't feel nothing we had to say today, but when you share it, there's other people that can benefit from the information that you've shared. Get the word out there, family, because it serves us no benefit to hoard the information, to have it for ourselves and then roll over and go to sleep. It benefits because it's people out there who need to have a better understanding of how we find ourselves in this condition so we can properly move in a way to get ourselves out. And so the more people that have the information, proper information, the better our chances become of climbing up out of this hellhole, I call it, that we find ourselves in as it relates to oppression in this society. So please share. Your shares are very valuable. Hanifa, you wanted to say anything?
No, I'm done. No.
Okay, family, that is our show and discussion for this week. We will see you next week, same time, until Mondays at 8 p.m. And join our Empower Hour Talk Show Facebook channel as well. Hit the subscribe button, and that way you'll get your chime whenever we go live with all these important and impactful topics of discussion. Okay, family, take care of each other out there. Until next time, peace.
Peace. Thank you.